Oh, here's one for you. You are so brilliant and kind and stupid hot. Keep going.
I know it makes you uncomfortable, but you're thoughtful, you're brilliant, and your ambiguous ethnic blend perfectly represents the dream of the American melting pot.
I know exactly what episode that's from. It makes me so happy.
Marie.
Yes, tell me.
You're a genius. Your brain is almost as perfect as your face.
Oh my God. I'm just going to glue myself to this chair right here. Paul's like, no, but seriously, ladies, it's time for you to wrap. And I'm just like, I'm going to stay right here.
I'm busy over here, choking. It's fine.
You are a beautiful, talented, brilliant, powerful muskox.
What is a muskox?
I don't even really know, but it's really obviously the coolest, strongest thing that's ever happened.
Hey, everybody, this is Tony. And this is Paul. We're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast.
Hey, I'm Tony Stewart. I like to read books on leadership. What? Thanks. Hey, everybody, I'm Paul with Friends for Life. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Friends for Life podcast. This is the Sarah takeover while Tony and Paul are out on the road interviewing people in all 88 counties. We're so happy you joined us today, and let's go meet our guests. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I would love to.
Tell me about you.
So I am Marie Wilbanks. Enough introduction done. So I obviously work in the field of disabilities. I've been working with Pickaway County. I'm in Pickaway County. I've been there for 17 years. Nobody knows where that is. I will tell you. You guys can be fascinated about the location of Pickaway County. We're directly south of Franklin, and that's all I usually need to say. But nobody knows that we're there because we're pretty teeny tiny.
Okay.
And yeah, what else do you want to know? I'll tell you everything. Open book.
Tell me all.
Tell me. Okay, let's see. I have a sweet husband who's totally excited to hear this podcast and apparently watch it. I have 2 children. My sister is living with us currently for just a short period of time with her 2-year-old. My children are 11 and 12, and there's a big difference. Something happens between the ages of 12 and 2 where you stop worrying about all your breakables, and so I'm back to worrying about them intensely.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it is. It's like a real regression. I have lost, even this weekend, multiple special items that I cared a lot about. So there's that, and I am so excited to be here. I just like talking to you. I'm a fan. I've told you. I'm like your super fan.
I'm like a super fan of yours too.
Yeah.
Like, so we're like just going to fangirl the whole time.
We are. We're going to fangirl the whole time.
It's going to be amazing. So, yeah. So I feel like the first time that I met you was at Gathering at the Grove.
It was, correct.
And we also continued to run into each other doing a lot of work in trauma-informed, trauma-responsive, now going to healing-centric work.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of crossover. Actually, remember, so when I first met you, you were getting ready to do your TEDx talk.
Yes.
And you had this very beautiful spin. Okay, now, this is the way that I remember it, but you can tell me if I'm correct about this.
I'm so interested in this.
Yeah, okay, so here's what I remember, and then you can say, no, Marie, that wasn't even remotely what I was saying, but you were pushing back on the idea of person-centered, person-first language.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, yes, nailed it. So you brought this really important perspective, and you said, I have had discussions with people, this is how they feel, da-da-da-da-da, and that was the opposite of what's kind of been ingrained into us, so I thought that was very interesting. That is the first time that I met you. And then, yeah, since then, we have had a lot of peripheral overlap with trauma-informed care, all of the progression with that. I was part of the first cohort that went through Sarah Buffy's, the biographical timeline cohort.
Training, yeah.
And then I think, were you part of the third?
Yes.
Okay, so then I was a fellow in that for a little bit. Which is great because you can see that that's trickling out all over the state and in becoming this collection of people who can reach out to each other and speak a common language in that respect. And I love that.
Yeah.
Important.
So what's really great about that is I actually very much remember that instance because I said, I got invited to do this TEDx talk. I'm so excited about it. And I want to talk about being a parent of a disabled daughter. And there was another parent there who was like, daughter with disability.
Oh, she corrected you. I remember that, actually.
Yeah, and it was really like, it wasn't like a gentle correct. It was like, this is how it is. And I said, I really appreciate that, but I had just finished a lot of, I think I had just finished with my master's. And so a lot of that was focused in disability studies. And so there was like this identity first, right? And so you see that with like people with autism, they'll be like, no, I'm an autistic person.
Yep.
And they're like, this is a part of my identity. And I always really use that with E because I just hate the fact that it's like a dirty word. You know,
right.
like
it's implying shame or it's implying that. And so I think it's important, as with any group of people who are saying, hey, I want to be addressed this way, I think it's important to listen to whoever holds that perspective, right? So it's not what I want. It's what you want as a mom.
Yes.
It's what a person with a disability wants, right? And you're so right. The community of people with autism absolutely have taken the other end collectively, not universally, but collectively. But no, I'm totally with you. I think that it's important for us to use whatever language is preferred by the person that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And so there isn't a right or wrong. If you prefer one way and this other mom prefers the other way, that's great.
Yes.
And we can both manage to like use the language that you prefer because we're thoughtful humans.
Right. Well, and that is really, because like for a while I was like, no, that's right, we're going to reclaim this, da, 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 da. And then I'm like, well, it's not really mine. First off, it's not mine to reclaim.
Right.
So like as an able-bodied person, absolutely, like I'm going to say, what do you prefer? And then, because I'm not like a total douchebag. Not total.
No, I'm just joking.
Douchebag. I don't know. Because I'm not like a total jerk. I think it totally just depends on that. But I do think that we do like a huge disservice by saying like, this is the only way to address people. And if you don't, you're a terrible person.
The judgment, it makes people afraid to have conversations full stop, which I find really frustrating. Ask or be open to the perspective. But when there's judgment built into it, exactly that. When you walk away going, well, I'm sorry I opened my mouth, that's not constructive. And it doesn't allow for space for people to learn or to ask each other questions or share perspectives. Because I hadn't thought of addressing people or putting disability first the way that you were talking about it. And that was great. That opened my mind to that entire idea. And you had very logical reasons why you wanted that. That's great. If you were like coming at me and you're angry about it, that does not do me any good. I have no space to learn. So maybe we all be a little bit less judgmental in that respect.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's so, I've been finding it very interesting the more that I'm in. So I started as a DSP at 18, so like 20 years ago. And so I've been in this space for a while now, and it always strikes me how, and I'm sure it is applicable to everything, right? Just like everything. But like how set in our ways we get, how stuck we get, and just the judgment that we even have towards people who are working towards the same thing, and that's what I always really appreciate. Like I love talking to you. There's like so many people like in the field that it's just like, oh, wait, we're going to have an actual conversation about this. We're not just going to be like, it's this way or the highway. And so I think the less judgmental. There's a real
look
word.
at you.
There's
You did it.
real word for that.
You did it. Very good.
The better. Like if we could just like delay that idea that we have to be right or it has to be our way. And I feel like that's such a hard place. I was not raised that way. Like I was raised like it's our way or the highway. And so I definitely like, that's what I am always so grateful for like college for, because they're like,
they open your mind. People opened your mind to different
Sarah.
perspectives.
Yes. No, Sarah, it's not. Or you have to support that. And I'm like, wait, I have to support stuff?
No, I was having a conversation with somebody on the way up here actually. And the conversation was about making sure to say, I forget exactly what, but the idea that, okay, good for you, not for me, and just being okay with that space, right? So that's great that works for you. It's not for me, but there's no judgment in that. And I think we would all get along a lot better if maybe we could just be okay with that. You're not doing it the way that I would do it, and that's okay. I'm not doing it the way that you do it, but we need to be a little nicer to each other. So yes, I completely agree with you.
Make space for differing views.
So I have to ask you, since we're just chit-chatting here, how did your TEDx talk go? Was it well received? Did you?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
You can look it up
I've never.
online.
I feel bad because I've never watched it. I knew
feel
that you've done
like
it.
the general idea is stuff that I use in presentations that you've seen. So it was kind of like an abridged version of that. But yeah, I think it was really well received, and it was all the theme of that was overcurrents. Not like being overtly like, yes, we're going to go make change. I'm not trying to like sneak in and make change. I'm just going to go out in there and get it. So yeah, so I was very happy with it. I felt like it gave like a very different perspective, and it was different than anything else that was there. So there were some people talking on mental health. Katie Peters, who works for Washington Local School District. I will give her a shout out.
Plug, yeah.
Dr. Katie Peters. Got to get it right. She is an amazing educator in the state of Ohio and does speaking and stuff like that. So she spoke about, a lot of different stuff, or not different stuff, about like knowing your song, knowing yourself, and, just really cool stuff. So there were so many good presentations from that day. What I remember the most is that the mic didn't work.
Oh.
So the whole part of it is like words create worlds.
Yeah.
And so like I used that a lot. And so I went through the list of stuff that people said to me when I had E, like
the tough stuff.
Yeah, all that really.
I've heard you. Yes, that's
the
a part
tough
of a
things that people say to you. And so in the video that's completely cut out. So it doesn't quite make sense. So the mic broke, and then I had a sleeve that wouldn't stay up, and it was very distracting. But I think it went over really well. It was like 2017. But
did you get blowback though? Did you get people who came up to you afterward or watched it and said, "Oh, but I disagree fundamentally with this perspective," and said it in a way that wasn't open to discussion, but just shut down your idea?
No, surprisingly
that's
not.
awesome.
I
haven't
gotten that. I think that, and so the biggest part like that I kind of took away is that, the way we talk about disability or parenting or anything really shapes the way that others perceive us and perceive their world. I just posted the podcast about like, narrative change and the power of, like we have the power to change our narrative. Like we can use that and we can do it. So I think that it does resonate with people. I do have some people, I have had one mom, and she came up to me crying afterwards after I'd done the presentation. And she's like, but my kid's so severe that it is hard, and so it's because I very much like push the idea that like, parent, being a parent is hard no matter what, I remember, so when Evie was born, she never did like the typical crawling, walking on that timeline. And I remember when Cadence, my second, was born and she was mobile, I'm like, these things are awful. Like probably what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah. So busy. Little hands are so busy.
Mobile children are terrible.
Yeah.
Who has typical kids? This is awful. But so like, it's just like getting past the idea that people are like burdens or anything like that, because life is hard and humans adapt. And that's always just my biggest thing, is that we are amazing creatures. We adapt to our circumstances. It doesn't make anyone phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, flattery, and I do feel like I'm phenomenal in many ways.
You obviously are, but you were not phenomenal because you have a daughter with a disability, right?
Right. So
you were already that way. You were always that way. And this is where we're fangirling each other. Don't worry about it. Okay, great. Yeah, that does make sense. And I also think it's important to acknowledge that there are, as with any children or with all children, but there are unique challenges. But I worry about when somebody looks from the outside, looks in, and their sole takeaway is, oh, I couldn't ever do that, or oh, your poor life. Yeah, that's so toxic.
Yeah.
So it can be very difficult, but
yeah,
it's always difficult.
I think the most challenging thing for me is to make space for people who are already there. So like the Welcome to Holland poem, are you aware of this? Okay, so there is this story, this poem, letter, whatever, that this person wrote. So this person is the parent of a child with Down syndrome. And so they're like, having a child with Down syndrome is like getting on a plane and you're going to go to Paris and you're excited to see Paris.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah, I've totally heard this.
Somehow you get rerouted to Holland. And it's not Paris, it's Holland. But Holland's nice too. So that story has helped so many people, right? But I read it, I'm like, excuse me? No, I got on a plane and I'm in freaking Paris. I'm not anywhere else. I'm where I wanted to go. I'm a parent. I got a kid. This is what I wanted. I wanted to be a parent. And I have a super spectacular child. Is she a firstborn overachiever? Yes. Yes, she is. Does she, put you through the ringer? Yeah. But you know what? All my kids do. They're really, I don't know who their mother is. It's like when kids are like, do something and you're like, whose child are you?
I do that.
You totally know.
This is where I look at my husband and I'm like, your child just did this.
Yes.
So I'm very good at blaming him for all the things that I just think, my kid didn't do that.
Yeah.
My kid would never do that.
My mom just looks at me and laughs.
Oh, my mom does the same thing too.
And I'm like, I don't
She
understand
thinks it's so
the humor.
funny. No, she thinks it's, you can, and then if anybody is in the general vicinity, she's very good about saying, well, Marie, this is why this is funny. She did these things. Ha, ha, ha. Look at her over there right now watching. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's my mom's favorite little show when we're out places and my child is doing something. Yeah. No, you're right. I love that. You should write the counter narrative to the Holland trip.
It would be like, I'm in Paris, mother.
Yeah. I love Paris. I am still in Paris. Thanks for asking.
In Paris, yeah.
I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really.
I'm not saying there's no litter on the streets, but it's still
it is Paris. And Paris has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
People can be very snotty there. Did you know this?
I did not. Yeah. I have not been.
I've been to Paris. People can be very snotty there.
Okay. I feel like
food's great, but
I feel like I've known like a few French people that are like, I could see where that would be real,
sometimes,
but then like New Yorkers too,
for sure.
But I have heard that about Paris. My sister went to Paris, but
there's pluses and minuses to
wherever you are.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's I guess that's my biggest thing is like there's always going to be things about life that are hard or challenging. And in my mind, one thing or disability or more medical care, it's different than a lot of people's quote unquote challenges or things that they have to navigate, but it's not any worse. So my biggest thing actually that I haven't actually thought about, my phrase that I kind of left with was that disability can be scary, but it's not to be feared.
Oh, I love that. That's
and
beautiful.
So I really,
so good with words.
I really just always hold on. Like things can be scary, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to fear them because that's life in general to me. I don't know.
Do you? So I didn't say this part earlier, but for all of your followers, so one of my children has a disability. So I do wear my mom lens a lot and think about things through that perspective. And it is why I really like listening to your words because you speak from that perspective and you do a really good job of capturing that. So and my son's adopted too, which I feel is relevant to the story. But one of the parts that I've been struggling with personally, and I kind of had mentioned it to you before, but so my son has spina bifida, and that is what it is. And there's a community of people who are just so accepting of what his disability looks like. It's so easy to get behind him and help him with accommodations for his walking and his braces and et cetera, and it is what it is, and that's great. But then he has recently had these mental health challenges, and I feel like there's this complete disconnect in my own head. And then also with other people, like, okay, so here, I'm not saying this very articulately, but let me try again. So there's the whole physical disability, like the visible disability, right? And people are very quick to line up and be supportive of that. And then there's the parts of him that you can't see that make him very challenging. And people really don't understand that. And so I do feel like and even when I'm talking about stuff, I would talk about what it's like to be a parent of a child with spina bifida all day, yoop-a-doop-a-doop. But when it comes to his mental health issues, because I don't feel like there's the same level of acceptance, well, there isn't the same level of acceptance, I get very closed-mouthed about it. And then I feel so guilty because I feel like I'm part of the problem of ending stigma, right? So I can advocate for him and his physical limitations. But when it comes to these other issues that I feel are surrounded with so much more stigma, I do tend to clam up. And I have been trying to explore that within myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is that I can sit here and talk to you endlessly about children with disabilities and what that's like to raise them, but have a really hard time with this other facet of him that I just find so difficult to talk about. That's me.
Are we having? I feel like
Yeah,
we get
do
a
it.
couch out. No,
I know. I'm going to slip you $100. I don't know what your going therapy rate is, but I mean, I really have I've been wrestling with this with myself recently of just, as long as I can remember, I've worked in the field of disabilities the same way that you have, right? I started as a DSP and have worked in every little nook and cranny and can talk about this. And then there are other parts of parenting that are very difficult, or other parts of what goes on with your kids that well, I shouldn't say you, but I have a difficult time with.
Yeah. So I can relate, but first I would say is that obviously you need to give yourself grace, because telling and sharing your story before you're ready is traumatizing.
But it's so difficult because I just get angry with myself, right?
Well, I mean,
what is that?
Yeah, I know. Well, we're really good at getting angry with ourselves.
We are. We're
but
so
we
good
need
at
to
that.
just like, I think there's grace but to say like, okay, I recognize this, but like maybe you're afraid of heights and you get all the way to a bridge and you know you need to go across it, but it's like this really stupid wooden swingy bridge and you're terrified of heights. So you know you need to get across it to get to the other side, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna just like run across. You're gonna like work up to it and you're gonna do it. So I believe in you because you are such a badass, amazing woman. I am not worried about that at all. But I will say it is harder. Mental health there's so much stigma around it. And I feel like especially in males, because I feel like, and this, I might go a little too much into the like patriarchy, but like we have this like ideal of like what men are supposed to be. And so it's very hard to, I think for like when we have like male children. So my son is 5 and he has a very explosive temper. Like, and he's getting better. I feel good about that. But I also am aware that at some point, it's like, what's a 5-year-old and what's some mental health that's going on. And I definitely try and keep an eye on that all the time. But it's not necessarily something I talk about with him, but like he has this very explosive temper where if he doesn't get his way, he's kicking me, he's doing this. And like, I'm really honest with him. I'm like, dude, like, you're 5 now, but someday you're going to be big.
Sure.
And you just can't do this. And I use the safe, this is a safe place. I wouldn't let someone come in and kick you. So I'm not going to let you kick other people.
A beautiful safety script.
That was
a gorgeous
safety
safety
script. This needs to be a safe place. So we do that all the time as he's like, and I'm like, it's a safe place.
It's not okay to hit mommy. It's not okay for mommy to hit you. It's a safe space.
No. But I think like there's such a stigma around mental health, especially like, even though I believe it's more prevalent in men. I'm not. I feel like I read
probably
different statistics.
Well, think about it. Speaking of patriarchy, but think about your entire life. You're told to tamp down your emotions, and that probably isn't very helpful when it comes to mental health.
Right.
So yeah, that stigma exists. I'm so depressed to find that I'm a part of the problem, and especially when I feel like it's so important to talk about the things that are difficult or to share different perspectives. But yeah, you're completely right. That's a tough space to grow up a little boy and be told expectation, hide all of your emotions, and we don't want to hear about that or talk about that.
And I think too, and it's so tricky as a parent too to be like, we're gonna validate, right? Like with like just using him as like my kid as an example. Still, like, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. It's not okay to hurt other people. And I feel like that's like this. It's such a balancing act, because I also feel like too, like, someday you're gonna be a man. You're not gonna be able to do this. Like, well, okay, like someday you're gonna be. I'm just trying to say, like, someday you're gonna be a bigger adult. And as an adult, there's a lot of challenging things, and we just have to. It's okay to have all these feelings, but we have to figure out how we feel it, but we keep moving, and stuff like that. So I think for me, it's always such a balancing act of like, I understand trauma and mental well-being and this and that, but then I also like, I'm just like, but sometimes you just gotta adult.
You do.
You know, and so like that's so hard for me to like try and navigate. And I feel like in one particular situation I'm in right now, like I deal a lot with that. So I think that's it's just a lot of it. I don't know. I feel like a lot of it is, hey, sometimes and to say like, yeah, because I feel like there's compassion, which isn't always good for disability, right? So there's this level of compassion, almost bordering on pity.
Sure.
So we can say like, oh, I can, yes, let's do this, let's do that. You know, there's maybe some like, it could be a little icky sometimes, but for those unseen disabilities, for like, you know, mental health and all those things, like I don't think there's that same compassion, because at the end of the day, if we can't function, people don't like that.
No, and people, that I guess that's one of my biggest concerns, right, is what if they see my kid and they accept that he has these physical limitations, but they watch his behavior and assume this is who he is this difficult child who says horrible things sometimes, or who does these horrible things and sometimes, you know, and are they going to be able to see past that the way that they see past his physical disability? Does that make any sense?
No,
like that's
that
kind
completely
of
does.
It's one of those things that I just want to go around being like, oh no, he's a really wonderful kid. He's having a really tough time, and I don't need to say that for the physical disability, because there's a shorthand for it. He clearly has a physical disability, so it's this. I don't know. It's an interesting space.
So this goes back to like the person-centered. Have you ever seen, I'm sure you have, because you're a wizard and amazing.
Correct.
And can we like later just like do like Leslie Knope compliments? Like
oh my God. Nothing would make me happier. Okay, nothing would make, okay, continue. Go ahead. You beautiful rainbow unicorn. Yes, we can do that later.
Golden starfish.
That's right.
Totally lost my thought.
Yeah,
oh, no,
that's
okay,
great.
so
we'll find it.
like I have learned, something I've learned to do with myself is kind of, and especially like when I took over like more like the CEO position, and I had to like kind of explain a little bit, like people would come into my office and be like, and I'd be like, you know, and not always open or respond correctly. But something I have learned to do is usually like a preface, like, hey, I think I talked a little about this in the how will you be thing that you were at the other day. But to say like, hey, this is how I'm showing up today, and I'm sorry, I'm feeling really anxious about something. I'm this and I'm that, and I'm doing my best to navigate that. But please be aware if I do something, or if you feel offended by something, please let me know, and I'm going to try and change that, or just like, how are you showing up today? And I think that this is something I started to do with my kids recently, is our check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a check-in. How are we showing up? What was a lot of times we do it at the end of the night. What was the best part of your day? What was the hard part of your day? They're little, so we talk about, what color are you feeling right now?
Oh, I love that. Do they enjoy it?
Yeah.
I'm a purple today.
Yeah,
you are. You're a purple.
And so, and then like my 7-year-old, my 5-year-old, they really like have the words. And so like my 7-year-old, like, I'm a pale pink.
Oh, how
like,
beautiful.
What is pale? Well, can you tell me what it means? Or, or they're, and then they'll describe, well, what's a pale pink? And so stuff like that. So that's something I've really enjoyed doing with them, and like just that check-in. But I think it teaches us then to check in with ourselves. So I think also like when living with, I have just probably generalized anxiety. But there's times where I'm just like, I can't slow my heart rate. I'm freaking out right now. And like, you have to do that check-in. And luckily I have really great friends. Like I had a situation the other day where like I was having like this 3-long-day panic attack. And I'm like, listen, I'm freaking out over here. Do you want to come over? I need people. And they did, they'd be like,
they showed up
and they'd
for
be
you,
like,
of
hey, what's going on? And they validate your emotions and stuff like that. So I feel like it's important to not dismiss the emotions, but to also understand, and I quote this like every podcast, but Susan David, I love her book, Emotional Agility. So good. And she says emotions are data, not directions. So there is a purpose for our emotions. There's a purpose for the way we are feeling. I mean, like, just like, the trauma stuff, like there's a purpose for why our body is doing something. And so if we can like take a minute and figure out, or say, hey, I'm a total mess today and I have no good reason. Hi. This is how I'm showing up today. I mean, I think there's a lot. I think being able to express what we're feeling and that we're still going to do our best is very powerful. And I think that helps you as well as other people around you.
And it's very vulnerable. So to be able to do that, to be able to honestly say where you are, it's very vulnerable, which then allows other people to be vulnerable with you, right? It makes other people feel comfortable when they need to say the things that are not going well, or they need to admit that when they check in, they're not doing very well. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that idea. We, sometimes we do a little stuff that's somewhat similar, but I think giving, even talking about doing it with your children, giving them the gift of language when it comes to their emotions and being pale pink and whatever that might mean. And I'm totally sitting here trying to figure out what color I am right now. I don't know. So I need to work on that. But that really is a gift to be able to give them the emotional capacity to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like growing up, my parents were always really good at, when you look at resiliency factors, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I'm halfway functional. I got that, you know? But like they're so good at making space, like letting you know you were loved, making space for you. Like I could go and talk about anything. It doesn't mean they were like, yeah, that's a
great job, Sarah. Yeah.
They'd be like, do we need to get therapy for it? No. But like there was space for that. And so I definitely want to be that type of parent as well. And it's hard with littles. Oh my gosh. It's probably hard with bigs too, because like getting them to then buy in and
it gets harder.
So they're buy in, but like still
open up, and they're on that cusp. I don't even say that they're on the cusp, but they're kind of already into that point where they are less likely to open up or use their words. That's just that part of it is hitting puberty and kind of becoming little maybe stoic men, but also just your parents aren't the people that you want to talk to at some point, and that's fine. That's natural and lovely. But yeah, they're already to that point where sometimes you feel like you're just like, I gotta draw this out of you. Come on, just tell me one little thing, Yeah, so it does, I think, in some respects get harder. There's that sweet spot. You have some who are in the sweet spot right now where they want to tell you and they're just overflowing with their sweet little emotions that aren't checked yet. It will change. But yeah.
I'm actually counting it. No, I'm just kidding. I will. So my 7-year-old last night, so they went to see the new Thor with their dad.
Oh, nice.
And they dropped him off and I went and saw it by myself the day before because I like going on movie dates with myself.
As you should.
I don't talk a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't have time for talking.
Do you get
during
popcorn
movies.
and drinks?
I usually get a drink. I'm not a big popcorn. You know what I love at the movie theater?
I thought we had so much in common, and we've officially fallen off that wagon. So, okay, wait, sorry, continue. Keep going.
I will eat popcorn if it's in front of me. I will not buy it for myself, but I love the soft pretzels and cheese.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. No. It's fine. I still love you. It's just, okay.
One time I was pregnant and I went to the movies and they're like, we don't have soft pretzels and cheese, but you can have these nachos. And I'm like, fine, I'll take the nachos. And I walked by and I saw them cutting a fresh batch. And I made my spouse go back.
You whipped back
around and you get me pretzels.
I can't believe they did that to you.
I don't want these nachos. I want pretzels.
I would always give you the pretzels.
Thank you.
So you know.
Oh, thanks. I would make you lots of popcorn. I would buy some popcorn for you at the movies, even if I didn't eat it.
Do you know what? I'm sorry, this is so important to what we're talking about, and it's fine. I will go into the theater and be like, but I'm not going to get any popcorn. I'm not going to go, oh my God, I want the large. Like, it's a very big problem. So anyway.
I want the giant big, like this is these are big gulps.
Yeah.
Like if I stop at a gas station, if I'm at the movie, I don't want a small. No, I don't want a small.
You want the biggest size possible.
If they have the buckets, I will take the bucket.
You want the kind that where you pick them up, you accidentally fall over.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how much soda I want. Mm-hmm. I love it.
That's wonderful.
It's delicious. But no, so they went and saw it, and then my 7-year-old, she gets out of the car, and he's like, I don't know why she's really grumpy right now. She's like, blah, blah. And so she goes in, and she's in the bathroom, and she's like, Mom. I'm like, okay. I'm like, hey, what's up? She's like, I have a secret. I'm like, okay, tell me your secret. She's like, when we were in the movie theater, I almost started to cry.
Oh.
And I said, when I was in the movie theater, I did cry.
You made her feel so much better.
And she's like, what? She's like, did people yell at you? I said, well, I didn't cry loudly. I
you weren't sobbing.
Or why? They were tears of joy at Chris Hemsworth's, but no, I'm just joking.
I heard the movie was amazing.
It was
and I'm very
really
much looking, and I
good.
heard it was funny, which is where I'm sorry, we could just also talk about Marvel a whole bunch. That's why I
Yes.
love Guardians of the Galaxy movies, because they're so funny, and Thor has kind of taken that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm hoping that that's where
Yes.
this particular movie goes, is sort of like a sweet spot of funny and like drama.
Yes.
And, okay.
Yes. I thought it was great. But yes, I was like, yeah, I did cry. I'm like, what part was it? Was it this part or was that? She's like, both those parts I wanted to cry. I said, that's okay.
Oh, she can cry. That's
It's
wonderful.
fine. I was like, I sat in a movie theater by myself crying at a Marvel movie. It's fine. This is healthy.
It's the most human. It's like a universal human reaction to Marvel
I know.
movies.
I love me some Marvel
But she needs to
movies.
hear that that's okay. That's
But I
lovely.
loved too that she was like,
It was her secret.
yeah. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And also that you can remove shame from things, right? Because like I feel like we're so conditioned to feel shame about so much. And
Sure.
so that was like a small gift for me. Like, oh, I got to remove the shame, like her embarrassment and shame. Because I grew up feeling very embarrassed.
Really?
I always felt like, I tell this story all the time. Like when people were in trouble at school, so they'd be like, who did this? And I would like, I always felt guilty because I'm like, oh no, someone's in trouble. Oh my God.
It was Sarah again.
Like, who did it? Like, even if I didn't, I was like, oh, this is so bad. They could be in trouble. And so they'd be like, Sarah. I'm like, no, it wasn't me. I swear. But
And your face just looks like
I could like feel other people's shame. Like I could just feel it. So I feel like there was always so many things that like I was just like easily embarrassed about or felt some sort of shame around. And so that was always really interesting to me. So the fact that I could do that for her made me feel like a good parenting moment.
Well, and that's huge because, I mean, we know, right? We're so trauma informed. Shame is so powerful. And it's funny because when I look back at my experiences as a younger, sure, there were so many things that I did and I wouldn't have been able to identify it at the time, but I was being driven by shame or a fear of shame, right? That happens so often. It's nice to be adult enough to identify it and then try to relieve some of that. And totally, what a wonderful situation to be able to give that to her.
Yeah, that was very enjoyable.
That is lovely. Parenting win moment.
I got to take them.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Well,
for
I can.
sure. For sure. They
So-
don't necessarily come all the time. They don't go all the time.
I think the majority of parenting, and this is what I like to always find very, very fascinating, is like, I think, so I'm very whimsical. Like that's just me in general.
Yeah.
I like the whimsy. I like a sense of magic, but I think we do over romanticize a lot of things in life, and I think parenting is one of them. Personally, this is just my view. So I appreciate if you have feedback, but I think that like, I feel like the world would just be better if we could admit like, hey, sometimes it sucks. Like, sometimes this is really hard and it's not always roses and it's not always these feel-good moments, but the feel-good moments is what our brain is programmed to remember. My mom had 5 kids. And I'll be like,
my mom had 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5. Where are you in the
I'm a
lineup?
second.
Okay, yeah.
Does it make sense?
The olders, yeah.
I know that's second born.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I would call her and be like, oh my God, the kids just did this or that shit. And she's like, don't remember. I'm like, what do I do for this? I don't know. I don't remember. And I'm like, how do you
Her
not
brain
remember?
shut down.
She's like, I think I've just chosen to remember the good times.
oh, that's lovely.
And I'm like, great. But that doesn't help me with this problem, Mom.
no, I have people who know me would be very quick to point out that I am not maybe the most maternal person on the planet. I am not. I am not the person who wanders around and just loves being a mom. And boy, that's the only thing that drives me. That's just not who I am. And I think it's beautiful and wonderful when that is somebody's world and they are so content in that space. Not really my jam. And so I gravitate to people who will call it out that it is difficult, that it's stressful and difficult and draining, and B, also kind of say sometimes, yeah, and it's not quite enough, right? It's not enough
Right.
for me to just be a mom. And it's because I feel like growing up, I watched my mom. She mostly stayed at home with us and didn't work. And so that was my model of what was correct and right. And so then I questioned myself, right, as this person who's like, no, I'm going to go to work today because I love my job, right? So then I push myself with that a little bit. I love it when somebody says, yeah, parenting's fantastic and I love my kids, but damn, this is difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm with my like people when anybody says that, or just, and I hope someday I am like your mother and I'm just like, oh man, I assume it was all just really great at this point. I hope that that's the case. It's not even that I'm living with crazy, horrible children. That's not it at all, but it's just a tough gig.
Yeah.
It's a very draining, tough gig.
Yeah. Well, and it's so, I agree though. I think there is such a stigma. I love the snot out of my children, but you know what? I definitely am the same type of person. Like, I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I always knew that I wanted a career as well, and like to be like, oh, that doesn't make you a lesser person.
Right.
Because your children aren't it's like they are your whole world, but they're not.
Right.
Because at some point they're going to grow up. And I feel like I've seen this. And again, yes, if they are your whole world and that gives you contentment and fulfillment, and awesome. Yes.
Yeah. Yay.
I'm so happy. Like, whatever makes people feel content and fulfilled. But I just also feel like when people are like, oh, you're just going to miss it because they're going to go and you're going to have nothing. And I'm like, no, like, I have a lot.
I fantasize about being an empty nester, and I love my children, and may they come frequently visit me. I don't know, but
yes. Well, and that's what, like, even my mom, she's like, yeah, everyone says you're gonna miss it, but she's like, I really don't. Having a lot of kids, having kids is hard.
Well, I swear, I think that is part of mom and dad. They weren't, and they will never be those parents that are just like, oh, sweet children, come back.
Yes.
They're not those people. They were like, bye-bye, it was so good. Oh, we really, okay, great. Like, stay in touch. And then that's kind of it. Yeah, for sure. Make good choices. Bye. Right. And so that part I'll be looking forward to that. And may I have many little happy memories along the way of trying to get my kids to the finish line, whatever the heck that is,
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, I think that it's always just really interesting to me. Like, and this is why I like having a lot going on, because I feel like I don't know, I feel like so many people just like almost throw all their eggs in one basket, that I'm like, no, if that basket falls, those eggs get cracked, that's fine, I got some more over here.
Yeah, you have 5 other baskets waiting in the wing.
I like doing, I'm a busy person. I like being busy. Like, I'm not good at downtime.
No, we're so similar. Can I ask you, okay, so you have started this agency, which is wonderful and good, and thank God, and we need you, and oh my goodness. What is, for you, the most challenging part in that? Is it running the business from the business perspective? Is it staffing? Is it finding that balance of working and your kid? Like, what does it look like for you? What's the trickiest part of all of this?
So I do have to say that I didn't start the agency. It was around way before me, and it'll be around probably way after me.
You're running a business, my dear.
But
okay, you didn't start it when you're running a business.
I will say, so I feel like a lot of things I can learn. So I didn't have a strong financial businessy background. Like, I'm very much the programming, the human services, like, yes. Right now, I mean, the hardest, most difficult part is definitely staffing, and knowing that I'm not able to really live out my own philosophy when it comes to programming and engaging with people.
Because you're up here and the control rests with the people below. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
No, just because you don't have the staff to do it.
Oh, yeah, yes.
And so, like, that's the hardest part for me. I think that, and then just navigating that line between, I don't love the operational part. I can do it, but I don't love it. That's not really, I'm like, where I'm like passionate about. Like, I want to be out there. I want to be promoting us. I want to be doing the best services humanly possible. Like, people come and then their lives are changed for the better, and it's great. Sure. I don't have the ability to do that, especially without any DSPs. So it doesn't matter how hard I believe or my directors believe, if I don't have staff that believes it too. I mean, and the staff that we have are great and amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, but we just need more people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like the hardest part for me right now is just being able to recognize that the level of excellence I want to be at and I feel like we're capable of being at, like we really can't right now because we just don't have the manpower.
Yeah, that's so frustrating. And that's certainly, obviously, that's where everybody is, or that's where most people are with their agencies anyway. But how tough to know that you have the right people and you have the vision and you have the energy, but you need bodies to roll out that mission.
Well, and then I always really struggle with the fact that, like, shouldn't it be quality over quantity? So, like, we've had to give notice, significant notice, and to really do what I want to do, I'd have to give even more notice. But also, like, no one has capacity right now. So am I just going to, like, abandon? Like, I can't do that. Like, I know what it feels like as a parent to not have help and support, right? And so anytime, like, I'm writing a notice, I'm just like, I'm so sorry, you know.
We at the county board are getting these notices, and we have the same reaction. No, please, don't leave. Yeah, so that's tough.
I know. So it's always just really, it's definitely an interesting place to be in. But I think that for me is the hardest because I do tend to be very, this is my dream, this is my vision, I know we can get there. I know what I need to do, but this is what I'm able to do. And so that for me is very difficult.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I do think that has to be what all the other agencies are saying too. Like when you guys get together, when you're operating, I bet that's very much just we know where we want to go. We just don't have the people.
And then do we take how many steps backward do we take to keep people alive and then move forward, you know?
Yeah, we've had some really, it's funny because it is such a crisis that we have had the most bizarre conversations with DODD, with our providers, because it really does boil down to, okay, we just need to make sure that the very basic is what's happening. And we would love for more, but it's completely unrealistic at this point. So, and what a sad space to be in that we can't figure out how to, that's just a tangled web, how to solve that problem of capacity. And
I feel like I've been on like so many different task forces and all this, and then it's like, what are we gonna do? Like, I'm so sick of talking. Like,
I feel exactly
what do we do? Do something, because that's the same thing. Like, don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution.
No, I completely agree. We have participated in work groups, and we've participated in, we attend this coalition and that, et cetera, et cetera. And there's it never feels like we've moved that needle at all. It's so frustrating. And I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I don't have the answer, because any answer that you come up with, it's just this, well, then that triggers this other problem over here, right? So if we pay more and attract more people, well, then the cost goes up, and we are already such an expensive state where we are providing these waiver services. And I mean, it just is like this on and on and on. So I wish I had a magic wand to fix that problem.
Yeah.
And it matters too, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that there are services for people who are in dire need of actual support. It's not like we can just be like, well, it was tough and we can't do it. No, people actually really need these services. If only the stakes weren't so high.
I know,
They are. Yeah.
If only it just meant I didn't get my cheeseburger.
Right? Like it would be okay. It's not.
I would
it's
still
just so
cry
different.
if I didn't get my cheeseburger.
Right. The world wouldn't be perfect, but we would all be able to continue.
We might be okay.
Yeah.
I think about this all the time. I think one for me, I think one of the solutions I find, and this is something that we do that I've really promoted, is that I will hire, if the family can find the person, I will hire them, I'll pay for their training, I'll do this, and I'll even negotiate a different wage. If they're doing it, if they know like, hey, like this is what I do for E. Like if my DSP that I found that was hired calls off, well, then I know I don't have help that night, right? But, so we're not always doing that backup, but it does allow people to identify people. And I feel like there's a huge ownership on families. I think for a long time, as a system, we made a lot of promises, and we had the manpower to do it, right? Like, get a waiver, get funds, we'll help you, we'll support you, this and that. Well, now we don't have staff, but I feel like parents and this probably comes off hard as parents. So Peter Block talks a lot about community, and until you take ownership of something, it's really hard to move forward. It's hard to change. It's hard to move forward. I think there's a level of ownership that parents and families and communities have given over to the system over the years. And I think to move forward, we need to take a level of that ownership back. And I'm not saying like we're able, right? Because I think this all the time. If I were a mom working 2-3 jobs and had to do A, B, and C and had all these, kids to take care of, and I didn't know the system, maybe I don't have higher education,
Sure.
all these things. Yeah, that's where we need to, yes, we're going to rally around you, we're going to support you, we're going to do that. But I think that the answer to everything lies in community. So, you know what, you're super frustrated because momming is hard and you need a break. So how do I, as a fellow parent, say like, hey, I see that you're super frustrated. How can I support you? Because the system is great, but systems are just counterfeit communities to me.
Well, yeah, they completely are. And so sitting on the county board side, I always feel and part of our job is to say, hey, but some of this is your responsibility, family, which is a really tough conversation. And people's expectations of what services should do are all over the spectrum. However, there tends to be this undercurrent that I feel more recently of just, right. So you're here to just make this as if it doesn't exist, right? Like you're going to take this problem and you're going to solve it entirely. And I'm going, no, I'm so sorry. Like that's not what we do. We help in some ways and we try to eliminate some of this, the pressure that perhaps you feel. We're here to help, but no, I cannot make it as if you no longer have a child with a disability. That's not what a county board does, right? And then I think along with some, when I'm thinking about community, what I want desperately for my kid is to have as few paid supports in his life as possible. For God's sake, may he be surrounded by people who want to be around him because they love him and are not getting paid for that, right? So but it's awkward as a county board to kind of voice that perspective that I very much feel because it really does become sort of this, well, you just don't want to pay for this or you don't want to do that. And no, that's not actually the case. There are finite dollars. There are finite people to provide these services. And don't you want this anyway? Don't you want this community of people to surround your child or your loved one and give them the same kind of life that we have, right? Do you remember, so even, I think, again, this was the first time that we were together, or maybe it was like the second gathering, anyway, but the chart that shows where, I have very few paid people in my life that I keep in contact with, right? And then you look at that from a person with disability, like from their perspective, and it's just chock full or sometimes exclusively full of people who are paid, right? We have to, don't you want to flip that, right? Yeah. Like that's, I guess, like the gentle pushback to families. Don't you want something different? Yeah. And people can love your child. People can love your loved one, right? Yeah. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there has to be a level of ownership and just like this idea. And sometimes like, and I get it too. Like, I mean, I have a brother who's an EMT and a sister-in-law who's a nurse, and they've come over to watch E before for me, and I'm so grateful for them. But that little turd decides every time she's there, she's like, I'm gonna rip out my trach and see what they do. Like she goes really above and beyond because she's a shit, And so I'm just like, so there are times I see like, I think it has to be like kind of a combination of the two for a little bit. Like, let's develop this community. Because like the reason I have even E-staff is because my daycare provider was like, oh, I'm really interested in working with E, and can I come and would you hire me and stuff like that. So it's like, even if we just start off like, hey, let me find this community and I can offer them $12 an hour, like I can do this or that. And then but I think it's a skill. And I don't feel like we're as good at it, especially like when you look at like social media and stuff like that, like which can be amazing communities, but like just like the face-to-face goodness, like what we're doing in life, people with common interests, like I think that I think we have to learn how to build community and reach out and to not be afraid to reach out for help.
Well, so we have somebody who does community connections at our county board, and we've had that position for probably, she's going to listen to this and then she'll be screaming at the podcast, like, it's been this many years, dummy. I will say 5 or 6 that she's been in this role, and we've learned a lot. And part of what we've learned is this thing that really shouldn't be so difficult, building of community, is fascinatingly tricky. And there are so many reasons why that looks difficult, and it really shouldn't, right? But what we found is that it's just not as simple as, unfortunately, it's not as simple as like pairing 2 people together with like interests. There are all these reasons that doesn't stick, or that people are afraid of other people who are different and are afraid to do the wrong thing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a tough, I love that our system is moving toward a place where we are prioritizing developing community. Man, it's frustrating when it just takes a lot longer than one would expect or hope.
Yes. Well, and I think that's always the frustrating thing, is because we want it to be really organic. And sometimes it takes planning, sometimes it takes maneuvering, sometimes it's not as simple as, oh my gosh, I just memorized this thing and I love her forever.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe it is at times, but I think for the most part, especially when we still don't have full inclusion in our schools, we still don't have, there's a lot of things we still don't have that still makes disability very scary for people. And so I think that until we get past that a little bit, it's always going to be a lot more work. But I love just like any success story where, like, oh, my neighbor checks in on me and this, yeah, great, awesome.
That's beautiful. Isn't that that's the best?
That.
Yeah.
I love that.
And we need to hear more about that. And again, as part of changing this idea that, well, if someone's interacting with you, they must be paid, right? So to kind of turn that on its ear a little bit, but also to lift ourselves up sometimes when we get frustrated that things aren't happening the way as quickly as I would like them to, right? Or it is trickier to establish community than you would want it to be. But yeah,
I think that's also why I am a fan of like the county board system. So like, we're one of 10 states that have the county boards still?
I didn't know that there were any others, but our system is a freakazoid, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird system.
But I do love, because the county boards were, let me get on my history
do
here.
it.
But like the county boards were created by parents, right?
Yeah.
Who like were like, hey, all our children got deinstitutionalized and sent back to us, and what do we do now?
Right.
We need community, we need support. So like they were created with community in mind to help build that and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that is always really good, like understanding your roots, So like I feel like and I wish I would have known this when I worked at a county board, right? Okay, like, yeah, so the rule says that I allocate the budget and and do this with the money, but like at the heart of who I am is a community maker. Awesome. I can go with that, and I wish we would have known that. I would have known that when I worked at the county board. And so like, but they existed even before DODD existed,
Yeah.
So it was like, so the whole process behind that creation was community. And so I think that, if we can get back to our roots and say like, this is really, this is our heart. This is the seed. This is, this is what started it all. So I think that that's really, I think that's always really, really beautiful and poetic and makes me like that we are the way we are.
I do like that. I love that. I feel it, right? In Pickaway County, I always feel that. I feel that I feel tied to that community and the work that we're doing in a way that, of course, you wouldn't if it were structured differently. So there is a real gift to that. So, okay, wait, I have another question for you.
Okay.
So I'm here with like my little county board hat on. What do you, either from a parent perspective or an agency perspective or whatever it might be, what do we as county boards need to hold as most, like, just this very important thing? What would you tell us? What's the thing? Yeah, tell me. Solve all the problems. Just I'll make them happen. But I do kind of feel like a little bit, if we sit here long enough, we're just going to solve all the problems.
Yeah, probably.
I do feel like that's probably real.
I think a 5-hour podcast is totally fine.
No,
too.
I think probably everybody will just love it so much.
I think they'll just like be glued.
But I would love to know because and you were in the county board, right? But at this point, you're coming at this from a different perspective, and I don't know, what do we forget? Where's our blind spot?
I think that coming from a parent perspective, so I dealt with a lot of guilt when I worked as an SSA, but then would go home and fail to make a doctor's appointment for the 27th time. Or, you know, like, oh, we haven't done the glasses. Like, I just made sure that someone went to the ophthalmologist. Yeah.
I mean, the eye doctor.
That.
Totally the eye doctor.
I just feel like sometimes it's called something different.
You mean like an optometrist?
Well,
ophthalmologist?
There's an ophthalmologist, but then there's another. Anyways, okay.
Yeah. Somebody with eyes.
Optical.
Yeah.
You know, but like, you know, you have that plan to like check off, oh, have they been to this doctor lately? Have they been to that doctor? And then I get home and I'd be like, oh shit, I was supposed to call the GI. And I didn't for the, 75th day in a row.
Sure.
Forgot. And so I dealt with a lot of guilt and struggle over that I felt like I was doing that for other people, but I wasn't doing it for my own kid. And so I feel like the biggest things, even if you can't offer monetary support or, physical support or something like that, just the idea that people are there to like help you out is amazing. So I had a mom reach out to me and she's like, I can't find staff for my kid. I can't. She was in a different state. I said, I don't know how your state works, but let me look into it. And so I made some calls and I spent, I don't know how long I spent on it. And I just really was digging deep. I reached out to every single person I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the emails of 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I emailed her back. I think I spent a good week on this. And I emailed her back and I said, hey, these are the people that I think can do something. I can't do anything, but I found these names. And her response was like, oh my God, I know that person. I didn't even think to ask her.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I was like, okay. And at first I was mad.
Oh, really?
And I'm like,
I just spent all this time.
First of all, you already know.
Right.
But then also I stopped and I thought, yeah, because she's overwhelmed and she didn't even have time to process all these different steps and, oh, maybe I know this person or that person. I wasn't in the same situation. So I was able to do all this stuff and get that. And so then I was like, yeah, that's what we need. If sometimes, you spend a weekend and you're like, oh shit, I'm really embarrassed. I know that person. And I never thought to call him.
Sure.
But it gets you somewhere still. And so I try and think about that. Or I had a mom, she's like, I need this. And I said, okay, you're involved with the county. I think they can help you with it. I said, I know someone at that county. Let me call them and see who I need to call. And so then I did. And, they hooked me up with this person and this person. And she's like, oh, you just saved me 2 hours of phone calls. Thank you so much. So I think it's always, to me, it's very simple things. And, I think having hope is important. I think being able to be the person that changes the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There's going to be parts of this that are very hard. What I'm able to do, I'm going to do. Hey, I noticed that we needed to get this appointment done, because my daughter has an ISP, right? So they would be able to see when's the last time this appointment happened, and so to be like, oh, hey, I was just going over things, or just checking in, hey, do you need me to call? I always find that because Evie is on a DODD waiver, she has Medicaid, and those damn renewals, I can't keep them straight.
Oh, for sure.
I'm just this is the worst thing ever. I hate this. And so I'm always I feel like that's what I hear SSA all the time. I'm like, hey, what is this? Can you check this on me?
Yeah.
But I also forget to reach out, so I always really appreciate when people do reach out and just say what can I do what does support look like for you? I guess.
What does support look like for you? That's that's a great way of putting it, actually.
It's just so different for everyone.
Tell me what is important to you.
Yeah. And I'll be really honest about what I am able to do and what I am not able to do. But
Sure.
I can maybe help you problem solve some of that. But I think it just looks so different for everyone.
Well, you do a very good job of presenting information that then asks people to think from a different perspective. So that's definitely one of your strengths in your presentations. And it is, kind of that idea of like, you are what you eat, right? So if I forget to, if I haven't thought through that or been exposed to that idea or forced to think like, oh, I bet this person's doing the best that they can, and this is what that looks like in this moment, then I get a little judgmental in myself where I'm just like, I can't believe that they didn't call us back, or they didn't follow through, or they didn't da-da-da-da-da-da, that whole spiral that you end up doing with other people. It's like I have to keep reminding myself, and my opinions or my perspective informs then my entire department, right? So I can have a bunch of judgmental people if I, maybe don't watch it. And so it's so important for me to step back and do the thing that you ask, which is, how does that, what does that support look like for you? I'm going to meet you where you are. Yeah, I'm going to have clarity in this moment when you're over here trying to deal. And that's a great gift to give somebody. So yeah, I really like that. And we should be continuing to work on that a little bit.
I think it's like just a human process in general. Like it's just so, and I like am really good at presenting it, but sometimes I suck at actually doing it.
I mean, because it's really difficult. Yeah. You said, I feel like I'm just sitting here quoting you back at you, but you said something like, and I'm just so good at judging, and I am so good at judging too. Like I obviously know what everybody should do, duh. Yes. And so it's just so hard to have that wonderful skill and not be able to share it with the world. But yeah, just remembering to, like, man, people are trying so hard. They're trying so hard, and it's tough sometimes. And grace. I say that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Let's give that person a little bit of grace.
Just give you some grace. I don't understand it, and I may be like, I don't understand this person at all, and this is terrible, and I want to rage, and then I'll be like, okay.
Great.
Now that we're done with that.
Yeah. Get the little vent out and then pull it all back in, and here we are.
And that everyone's best looks different.
Doesn't it? Right.
Why does it look so different?
It really does. And it's so easy to judge that.
I know.
Because sometimes people's best isn't as good as my best.
This is the best you got.
Right.
Sure?
You can do more. I know. It's just, but it's a muscle, right? That's completely a muscle that I know in myself. And this is where the good life was always really helpful, or bringing it back to trauma-informed care. It's a muscle that I have to keep using, or it atrophies. And I fall back into kind of my default setting of like, oh, I can't believe they da-da-da-da-da-da, So, man, just to keep that in the forefront for myself.
I just always think of it, like it's a muscle, and I don't know that you can't create muscles out of anything, but you can nurture what you have and you can develop it, know? And so I think that that's always kind of what I'm going to assume that we all have this within us as human beings. We all have this. And some people, and you always have to work on it. You have to develop it. You have to practice. And with all these skills, like we all have, people are amazing. They're, I think humans in general, most days, sometimes I'm like, I hate everyone.
I know. That's another one of my default settings where I'm like, I just don't like people. And so I really have to work on that sometimes.
I hate everyone, and I am never leaving my home.
Yeah.
But that's not true, because like I thrive off people, but yeah, I think that I just always try to remember, like, we, as humans, we all have such great ability, and we can do great things, but it doesn't mean that your great thing looks like my great thing.
Totally.
And so just having, again, that mercy and grace, and it's so flippin' hard.
Paul, did you notice? Hi, Paul. Did you notice that we've solved all the world's problems right here?
Yeah.
We did it.
Today we've done it.
Like here, the world is spinning on its axis, and it's probably better for it because we just did all this.
We just did a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for a nooner. No, I'm just joking.
I feel really good about this. Oh my goodness. I do need to give you therapy money. Thank you. This is like a therapy session with a microphone. It feels really good.
I'm so happy you came here.
I'm so happy that I came here. This was worth getting up at 5:45 for. It really was. It was worth this like very questionable Speedway coffee. There were a lot of things that happened this morning, and it was all worth it to be here in this chair.
All the questions. All the questions.
Yeah, no, just this was the best way to start my week, actually. Yay. Genuinely, the best way. You're an amazing champion, and thank you for asking me to come up.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah. I mean, what is fodder for actual cutting? I am curious. Like, if Sarah's like, you should probably cut that, and you're like, I didn't cut it at all. What is the thing that you would be like,
Yeah, like what's
snippity
your
snip?
criteria? Because it's totally different than mine. Not totally different.
Oh, I'm gonna be so hurt when like we go back to. I'm gonna listen to this and it's a 5-minute podcast and Paul's like, yeah, Marie, that happened. I'm gonna just be like, well, I guess it didn't go as well as I thought.